Hello everyone and welcome back to Football Manager 2024 and the first experiment of the new game, where today we are seeing what would happen if you had the perfect player in Football Manager 2024. So you can see on the screen we have got the son of my manager in game, Jenkaldo Junior, and he is 17 years old, playing for South Shields under 18s. And across all of his stats, we have given him the best possible outcome of 20 for almost everything except aggression. If you give him 20 aggression, there's a risk of quite a few red cards coming up. So I thought I'd leave that one at a 10. He is 200 centimeters tall, so 2 meters clean, and 80 kilos. He is quite young, he's 17, so he should gain weight with time. That makes him more appropriately sized. He's probably a bit of a beanpole at 17. He's described as a powerful striker. He's driven, can use both feet. Apparently is rated 4 as a goalkeeper, so that's pretty good as well. But if we have a look at his attribute details, you can see he's got 200 current ability and 200 potential ability, which is the best it can be. I've not touched his reputation, but he's got 20 for almost everything. 1 for loyalty, because I'd prefer it if he moves teams a little bit. 10 for professionalism, sportsmanship, temperament, and controversy, because again, you set those at 20, it can have different effects on how he plays, and I think actually it's best to be a little bit ambiguous in some of those areas. 20 for consistency, just 5 for dirtiness. I think you want a little bit, but not too much. 20 for important matches, 1 for injury proneness, and 20 for versatility. So he is set up to be the best player in the world. I don't think anything else on there really matters. We've set his contract up so that he should be staying at South Shields for a while, but that doesn't really work out in this experiment unless you trap him there. Using the full editor, he doesn't tend to stick around. And in a way, it's nice to just see what will actually happen in the game without compelling this player to stay in non-league football for too long. So we will just let this run all the way through his entire career, and we'll find out what happens to the perfect player. I'll jump ahead 10 years forward first so that we can see how he's doing at the midway point of his life when he's 27, or his life as a footballer, not his actual life, hopefully. And then we'll jump to the end of his career straight afterwards. So let's go forward 10 years now and see if he's still at South Shields. Well, we are now 10 years ahead, and you can see he is still a perfect player, but he is currently at Newcastle United, which if you've been watching the Newcastle series on the channel, you'll be very happy to see. He's on 500 grand a week. It's nice he hasn't gone to PSG. I do have all the leagues loaded, so he could go literally anywhere, but he has stayed at Newcastle. It looks like he was at South Shields for just 1 season. If we have a look at their senior squad schedule for that very first season, he actually didn't play much for the first half. I checked in about 6 months into this experiment running forward, and he didn't start playing until around here, I think. Probably the 3-1 win. No, maybe a little bit afterwards. But it took some time for him to actually break into the team. You can see he does get a goal here against Curzon Ashton, but it takes a while. And in the meantime, he played about 20 games for the youth team and got 62 goals in that time. So it really was sensational. But then you can see the uptick in form that comes afterwards. He's scoring nearly every week, even when they're losing. Can't help but score goals. But they don't manage to win the FA Trophy. But in the National League North, if we have a look at that first season's table, despite him not getting involved until nearly halfway through the season, they do win 30 matches and finish top, and he single-handedly turns around their season to get them promoted into the Vanarama National League. And you can see how badly they started this season as well, like 5 wins by the end of October. Really bad start for South Shields, but he manages to get them promoted on his own, and that gets him a £1.1 million move to Nottingham Forest. So you can see with South Shields, 29 league goals in 26 games, 36 in 29 in all competitions. And then off he goes to Nottingham Forest, where if we have a look at their first couple of seasons, you can see in the first season, when he's at the club. It doesn't take him long to get on the score sheet. Second game in the Premier League, and he bags a brace after that early defeat to Manchester United. And then the nice thing is they go on a really good FA Cup run, getting past even Chelsea with him scoring the winning goal, of course. They beat Manchester United in the semi-finals. He gets a brace in that game. And then in the final, he is not on the score sheet, but they do manage to beat Arsenal 3-2. And he's gone from winning the Vanarama National League North to winning the FA Cup in just one season. And then the following year, they actually finished 5th in the Premier League and managed to qualify for the Champions League. Now, things don't go as well as they were the season before. He's still there getting goals, but not doing very well in the Champions League, losing to most teams. They managed to beat Lens, Porto, and Nice. Oh, they actually got a little winning run here. Keep going in the FA Cup as well. And then they make it into the Champions League knockouts against Porto, where he does manage to get goals in both games, but they do still get knocked out. And then they get knocked out in the quarterfinal of the FA Cup as well. Just a little look here at those two league tables for Nottingham Forest. So you can see 5th place that first season. They do it by 5 points over Villa. And then in the second season, they actually finished down in 13th. So without Champions League football, you can understand why he maybe didn't want to stay at Nottingham Forest. And so instead, he moved to Newcastle United for £53 million. A huge move, a huge player at what is a huge club in this game. So he can elevate them to the next level. Now, it looks like his goal scoring isn't that great in the Premier League. Bear in mind, he's an out-and-out striker, and he's got perfect stats. He's not even getting that Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo goal a game territory. His best season is 33 Premier League goals in 37 Premier League games. But he does get assists. You can see the number of man of the match performances that he's getting as well. And if we just have a look at how Newcastle have finished each of those seasons in the Premier League, if I can get to the screen, then we'll see. So the very next season, they finish 3rd, good way off Man City, then 2nd, still a huge way off Man City. That's a massive gap between 1st and 2nd. But then they managed to win the Premier League eventually. So he does become Premier League champion, but Man City and Newcastle battling it out for the titles season after season. Nobody able to retain it. It just goes from one to the other each time. You can see the past winners there. Man City won it so many times in a row, but then Newcastle came along, and it's been between the two of them ever since. But he's now got 3 Premier League titles to his name. And if we have a look at how they've done in the other competitions since he joined in the 26-27 season, just run through towards the end of each one. You can see they're in the FA Cup, the quarterfinals of the FA Cup. They beat Man City there as he scores twice in that. They beat Liverpool in the Champions League quarterfinals. They beat PSG in the first leg, and they beat them in the second leg. He scores a winning goal over Kylian Mbappe to get them through. And he also wins the Champions League. In his first season at the club, they have won the Champions League. That's pretty good going, as they failed to win the Premier League. The next season over, Champions League doesn't go so well, as they do get knocked out by Man City this time. A little bit disappointing. And then Man City knocked them out the FA Cup as well, so that doesn't go as well for them. Again, Champions League, managed to get past Fiorentina, and then... that is the knockout game. And then Real Madrid, they beat 6-1 on aggregate. Really nice performance there. Quarterfinals, they get knocked out by Arsenal, but they are in the FIFA Club World Cup, which, let's see how they do in that. They do make it to the semis, but are beaten by Man City. They're absolute rivals. Still haven't won the EFL Cup. Maybe that'll happen this season. No, they lose to Chelsea 3-1 in the final there. Champions League run goes on, and it's Man City again, and then they lose to Brighton in the FA Cup final. So it's not going particularly well for him in the cup competitions after that initial Champions League win. You can see again into the Champions League knockouts, requires penalties against Lyon, then beaten by Arsenal, and we're getting towards the end of these now. And you can see again, EFL Cup final, they do win it this time against Tottenham. Israel with 2 goals, a bit timely. Maybe my video will get flagged for saying that. Beat Lyon, beat Real Sociedad, beat Inter Milan 5-0, but in the final they lose to Manchester City again. It just keeps on happening. And then in this season, again, Champions League, beaten by Tottenham in the quarterfinals. They do make it into the Club World Cup, but lose in the semi-final to, of course, Manchester City. So, I mean, it's fair to say it's just not going well for him on the competition front. If we look at his competitions milestones, he has had a few wins with England, but otherwise the cup competition's not going too well. If we have a look at that England national team history, I imagine it's been pretty good. I think he started playing in 2024. Let's see if we can see when he gets his first goal for the team. And we can see it's there. It's a 3-0 win over Denmark in the Nations League. The next season, World Cup qualifiers. The season after that, the World Cup, huge win over Syria, where he's not on the score sheet. And then in an 8-0 win against Jamaica, he gets 7 goals. But they do get knocked out in the quarterfinals by Argentina. Real bitter blow there for the England side. Perfect record in the qualifiers for the Euros. And then in the Euros, they beat Germany 3-0 in the second round. He scores twice in that. 3-0 over the Netherlands with twice in that. And then in the final, he scores 4 goals in the final to win England their first major trophy since 1966. What a way to do it. 4-0 over Spain. And then we'll just jump ahead. They win the World Cup as well. What a run that is as well. That's exercising all your World Cup demons in one go. Beating Argentina on penalties. Beating Croatia 3-1. Beating Brazil 1-0. And then again, he gets a hat-trick in a World Cup final. We've seen someone do that before for England as they win the World Cup 4-0 to become European and world champions. They beat Spain to the Nations League on penalties. They retain the European Championships with a 5-0. Again, he gets a hat-trick. And then they retain the Nations League with a 2-0 win over Germany. So his time for England, at least, pretty good. Just have a look at his biography at this stage, and you can see there's an awful lot racked up there. He has won the European Golden Boy award, which is good. Just checking, has he won the Ballon d'Or, FIFA Ballon d'Or twice? So he's not been winning it every time. More recently, he has been winning it. The second, but not a huge amount in there before that. So only recently has he started to win the Ballon d'Or, but he has won it the last 2 times. So pretty successful season, it has to be said. Feel free to pause the screen if you do want to have a closer read of this. But what we'll do now is have a much faster run through the second half of his career and skip to the end of it right now. Well, we are now at the end of his career, and you can see that he has retired and gone to become a manager. Unfortunately, he does only have the National C licence, so he's unlikely to get a top job anytime soon. But if you would like to see me run this experiment with him as a perfect manager, I'll see if I can get him a job. Leave a like down below. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see that happen. And of course, do subscribe to the channel if you're new. New experiments coming almost every day if I can get them out. And I have lots of other series that will be happening on the channel this year. So do subscribe if you're new. But you can see down the bottom here, he spends the majority of his career at Newcastle from 2026 to 2043. So 17 years at Newcastle United before then making the move to Al Ittihad, who I can imagine just have, even at this point, an enormous amount of cash. You can see in his 2 years there, he actually becomes an icon of the club alongside Per Schurz. Did not know he played for Al Ittihad. But he has spent a huge amount of time at Newcastle United. And if we have a look at, actually, let's have a look at his scoring record first as a player. So we left off at the end of what would have been the 2033 season. So around here, and you can see he'd had that 33 goal season. He actually went and beat it with a 35 goal season in 37 for Newcastle. So a really good return there. Does really well on the assists the next season, still getting 30 league goals. You can see the number of goals he's scoring still fairly high, but not as high as you see Haaland go in the game. So I don't know what the difference is there in stats. Maybe you guys know, could let me know in the comments. But he has 4 30-plus goal seasons in a row. And then he really drops off. 18 goals this season in the league, 36 overall. But then he makes a move to Al Ittihad, and you can see 35 and 34, 40 in 34. And then he decides to retire after getting his first season of 40 goals, 56 in 53 overall. And if we have a look at the competition screen of Newcastle, you can see they did win the Club World Cup in 2041 with him. The leagues continued to come in. They'd won 3 of them, so they'd won the 2033 one last time we checked out, and it looks like they have managed to keep winning them ever since. We'll go and look at the league tables in a minute on that, and you could also see the sheer number of Champions League titles they've won. They've ended up winning 5 more of them, so 6 in total, but I think he'd left for the 2045 one. He was already at Al Ittihad, but it does mean he's won 5 Champions League titles with Newcastle. Again, a pretty good return. Got an FA Cup in there. You've got a few Carabao Cups in there as well. So he does at least a few FA Community Shields in there. So he does at least manage to win the trophies, Super Cups in there. He's won everything with Newcastle. So you can see why he maybe would decide to move on. Just have a quick look at these historic league tables for Newcastle, starting with the first season when we left off. You can see they do take it there. I mean, Man City really dropped off there down to 4th, and then down to 6th for Man City, as Newcastle were able to quite easily keep winning the title year after year after year. I didn't realise they'd won this many in a row. But there they are, look, just racking up title after title. Does anybody stop them? Eventually, Chelsea stopped them in the 2043-44 season, which may well have been his last season, but they've won almost every other title since. So they've done pretty well overall. And if we have a look again, just at the Champions League past winners, you can see the finals they've had. They've beaten Arsenal, Man City, Chelsea. They lost it 2 years in a row to PSG and Real Sociedad before beating Milan, failing to make the final, and then with him out of the club, they then beat Napoli as well. So he had a really good run in the Champions League, winning 5 Champions League titles. So he's done pretty well overall, fair to say. Definitely a legend of the club by this point, isn't he? Apparently he is not a legend of the club. He is only a mere icon alongside Steve Harper. They've done apparently the same amount for this team. Steve Harper, which is quite the record. If we look at their best 11, Jenkaldo Junior finished with 694 goals in 951 games, which is the same contribution as Steve Harper. Even Israel managed to make it into the Legends tally, but not Jenkaldo Junior, which is an odd decision by the club, it has to be said. Now, if we just have a look at his time at Al Ittihad in the last 2 seasons, I actually have no idea what he may or may not have won. And I actually don't even have this league loaded, so all we can see is the AFC Champions League, where he had been scoring a lot of goals for them. And they did make it into the Champions League final, where they won 4-0 and 4-0, even though only one person scored in each game. But he did score in the second one. So clearly the game hasn't completely figured this out. I wonder if I go on view match, if I can see this. No fixtures available. Club World Cup, he actually goes back to Newcastle and loses 2-0, which is a nice touch. Next season, they failed to win the AFC Champions League, losing to Al Nassr in that one. But I don't think he's going to be too upset. If we just have a look at his biography, that is a lot of text, which is always a good sign when you're doing this experiment. Maybe not as many trophy wins as you might have expected. He has won an awful lot of competitions, 13 Premier League titles. He ends up winning 3 Nations Leagues in there. We'll check on the England competition wins in a moment. But he joins Al Ittihad for 26.5, scores 75 league goals in 68 games and wins the AFC Champions League with them. He has won an awful lot of competitions. Ballon d'Or, he wins, well, he is Ronaldo and Messi combined, it would seem, as he wins absolutely every one, except for in the last 2 seasons, where the coefficient of the league is probably not high enough for him to be able to win the Ballon d'Or at that point. But you can see with England, he does go on to win the World Cup 3 times in total. Very nice going. He wins the European Championship 4 times, 5 Champions Leagues, Super Cup twice, FA Cup he wins only twice, once with Newcastle, once with Nottingham Forest, 5 times on the Carabao Cup, 10 times on the Community Shield, the European South American Super Cup he wins twice, Nations League 3 times, Premier League 13 times, AFC Champions League and the FIFA Club World Cup once. So he has won literally everything available to him, even the Vanarama National League North, which doesn't seem to be listed here for some reason. Maybe it's not as reputable as the other competitions that he's won. Well, it does say he began his career at the Nottingham Forest under-18s, which is a lie. That is not true at all, as evidenced by this little bar in his career stats right here. But that is basically going to be it. I mean, you can have a quick look at the England team schedule if you're interested. Going back to that 34 season, the win over Portugal in the final. They lose the Nations League final there to the Netherlands. They beat France on penalties to win the next one. He scores the opening goal in that final. World Cup 6-2, another World Cup final hat-trick for him as they win a 3rd World Cup in a row. They lose a Nations League final there to Spain. They beat Germany 3-1. He scores in that final as well. That would be a satisfying European Championship final. And then they actually lose to Brazil late on there. I don't know if he's still playing at this point. It doesn't look like it. He stopped playing for England at that point. So they stopped winning World Cups. But if we go back and just have a look at his final goals tally for his country, you can see he scores 203 goals for England in 219 games. Definitely their greatest ever player, it has to be said. So that is going to be it for this experiment. If you did enjoy it, drop a like down below. Let me know if you'd like to see him become the perfect manager. And if there's a way that I can get him the pro license with just the in-game editor, do let me know down below. I'm not sure that's possible, but there are ways to do it. So I'm grateful for any advice you've got. But otherwise, do subscribe to the channel. And until next time, see ya.